Welcome to Very Honored Frater BT's Esoterinerd podcast, episode 24, in which I interview Wiz Garber. But first, Transformations and Footnotes. If you'd like to listen to these in order, start with episode 18, Twin Peaks Tarot, then move to episode 21, David Crawford. This is Part 3, Transformations by John Dan Reeb. Chapter 1, Verse 3. It's so sane in the white light. They message so much. I message so much. Back here in the flesh place, in the meathead brain that aches, I hear the beta body chattering, trying to give my soul significance and label it, making it supermarket available and palpable, even palatable. Weird wired make-wrongers on the radio, cranking out hanged man's hope and despair for the flesh place fear junkies, driving cars with smog chokers, complaining about pollution and natural resources dwindling, and demanding at the same time their rights to drive around in cars that seat 2.5, burn petrol like it will always be there in 400-horse engines on oversized tires, all of which takes about 12 tons of the finest Appalachian coal or its equivalent per unit to build, and can set the Cuyahoga River on fire at any time. I get dressed, wandering through the haze of consciousness here, to organize my awareness of the exactly how this world operates in comparison and contrast to all the others that I'm used to. When I stop worrying, I remember and forget where I put my glasses the night before, and cuss around the house, waking the others and allowing them to think that being human is an only. And now for the footnotes. Sane in the white light implying it's insane everywhere else. Maybe down here, astral plane. They message so much, I message so much. Yeah, it's like when you wake up and you kind of come from those places and you're like, wow, there was so much going on just now, you know? Like, there were a bunch of others, I was there, I was saying stuff that I knew at the time, and then as you wake up, it just fades. It fades quickly, and then you're like grasping like for straws. The way I always like to put that is when you go hiking, you bring your backpack and you choose what you're going to put in your backpack, and the more you put in there, the heavier it is. So, a smart hiker will put in trail mix, a water, just the basics, maybe an emergency kit. You don't bring the kitchen sink. You don't bring the car. You don't bring the entire Akashic record. And so similarly, when we take this journey, this sojourn into these mortal realms, and we become these babies, and we open our eyes, and we start taking in these really solid memories through the senses, and printing them in the synaptic patterns. And then more and more as we grow up, only giving significance to those printed synaptic patterns which we label reality, or that world in which we are a tiny little ant crawling on the surface of a rock in the void. And we start to ignore other, more true senses of reality and our sense of self. Back here in the flesh place, where he's writing, of course, on a typewriter, in the meathead brain that aches. Poor guy. I mean, he grew up in a time his mom would give him pie for a reward if he had done well in school, or to make him feel better if he was sad because he had gotten beaten up for being fat. He didn't get out of that sort of American 1940s, 50s, and early 60s sense of, I'm just going to eat lead and it'll be fine, The really good part of Transformations is his clearly writing down his experiences about the other worlds and his reflections on this world. But it's clear that he really isn't enjoying himself on account of he's uncomfortable in his body. And that's where yoga comes in. Now, as John Dan Reeb 2.0, or as I like to call myself, Edward Charles Reeb, I'm trying to upgrade. I want to be comfortable in my skin, and not hate waking up in the morning. And, I hear the beta body chattering, the beta mind, beta waves. There's the chattering part of the monkey immediately follows up with, I hear the beta body chattering, the body, like the mind body, the astral body. It's interesting. Trying, in his est background, that would have been like efforting, not a good thing. There is no try, only do or no do. It's like Yoda. By the way, I was very happy to find out that one of my heroes, the original Flynn, Jeff Bridges, also went through Earhart's seminars training. And I can't help wondering if he and my dad were sitting in the same room together at some point. But when I read that on his biography, given how cool Jeff Bridges is, I've got this Abide postcard in a shrine area at my house. Well, it just makes me think they might both have been onto something. People get allergic because of the Scientology connection. As you may know, I have my segment in which I define the terms of the Church of Scientology, and I had a friend who was a psychiatrist, and he was talking to me about a patient he's working with who was absolutely abused and ripped off and just completely disregarded and left for scrap, like so many people who actually get involved with the Church of Scientology, which is why I put so much emphasis on not getting involved with the organization, but encouraging self-education, because what is the baby in that bathwater? Well, you can find out. You don't need to join. You can just read it. You can just learn it. One of the things that makes a Scientologist such a weirdo is they find themselves thinking in this terminology that nobody understands. So what if you and I, the Esoterinerd, started to understand their language? And what if we could start to help others to understand their language as well? Well, then they might not feel so isolated, and they might feel more free to kind of cross back and forth over the line between church and real world, and then maybe, be able to come back to us one day. So this beta body is trying to give his soul significance. He gets into the word significance later, so I won't go into that too much. And label the soul, making it supermarket available, like putting a UPC symbol on it or something. And palpable, even palatable. So yeah, he's talking about the chattering monkey is trying to give form or substance or a label or significance of some kind to his own soul, and then not only that, but try to spin it in a way that it's like, oh, and it's good too, and it's people like it. A beta body that's surrounded by self-help books. Weird, wired, so we're talking about synaptic patterns here. Make-wrongers, and that's again hyphenated. I mentioned that in Chapter 1, Verse 2, Episode 21. On the radio, again, still reflecting on the radio that is blasting because the alarm went off to wake him up at 5:30 a.m. and he hasn't turned it off yet. Or maybe he's just listening to the radio while he's waking up. I don't know. Cranking out, hanged man's hope and despair. Cranking out, so we're talking about like a factory, like some kind of lever going clunk, 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 stamping cookies out, at 2 cents a unit. Hanged man's hope and despair. And this is hyphenated hanged man's. Tarot buffs will already kind of know what this is a reference to. There's the card that corresponds with water and mem, and there's Odin hanging. He had to hang for 40 days, was it? And then come up with the runes. If you haven't read Neil Gaiman's American Gods, read that. That'll make it all make sense. Hope and despair. So you give the hope and the despair together, like the news, Except they just give the despair on the news. But to really get people into your cult, if you're living in medieval Europe, then make sure you scare the crap out of them and then let them know that their only salvation is, in eating your cookies. For the flesh place fear junkies. This is where he introduces the term. He'll get into that term more later, but just to break it down, it's flesh place, one word, fear junkies, one word. So people of the flesh place, the place of the flesh, not necessarily the earth, because there's a lot more going on the earth than just flesh, though we humans certainly are a manifestation and an unfolding, a blossoming of the earth. So the flesh place. Fear junkies. Junkies. Addicts. Like heroin junkies. On the street. Can't get enough. Fear. So they just can't stop watching Fox News. They just can't stop pushing that fear button, that paranoia button, that, oh my god, what's going on in the 12th house? Oh, the moon's void, of course. Or whatever. driving cars with smog chokers, complaining about pollution. The contradiction between. It was the 70s. These were new ideas at the time. Now we're all kind of oversaturated with the knowledge of how much is wasted for every little styrofoam cup that we get to enjoy and then throw into the ocean to join that continent of trash. I get dressed, wandering through the haze of consciousness here, to organize my awareness of the exactly how hyphenated this world operates in comparison and contrast to all the others that I'm used to. I have to admit I'm a little jealous of that. I mean, I only have one or two other worlds that I'm used to. And then cussing around the house, waking the others, at the time that was my mother and sister, and allowing them to think that being human is an only. This, of course, is a reference to when people say, I'm only human. Of course, what they mean when they say that is, oh, don't expect me to be perfect. I'm not Jesus. I spilled it. I'm sorry. But what's built in to the meaning of the statement is that being human is an only. And so he's cussing around the house looking for his glasses so that my sister and my mother can wake up and go, well, he's only human, and human is an only. Implying, of course, that being human is far more than an only. Our guest tonight, Wiz Garber. I met him on Facebook. He's up in Seattle. And when I started going with the To Be a Yogi podcast, he had suggested that his partner in crime, Jyoti, a.k.a. Melanie, be a guest. So check out that if you haven't already on your favorite podcasting platform, or if you go to the website for this page, just click all podcasts on the upper left and then click To Be a Yogi. And she's in episode 2. Wiz Garber was here in Los Angeles, hanging out with some friends at the House of Intuition. So he actually came over, and we spoke in person. I just left the phone recording the entire time, so some of the sound quality isn't that great, but I left it in, for the words. I may have even had the phone in my pocket for a while. I apologize for that. I'm only human. So let's get to the interview, shall we? Greetings, Frater. Welcome to the Esoterinerd podcast.
Greetings.
I heard a rumor that your name was Dan.
That's my given name.
Okay. Is it okay to let people know?
Sure.
Okay. But I know you as Wiz Garber. Up until today, I knew you as Wiz Garber. Let's see. So, if you'd like to sit here or here. And now I'm going to edit this so that, some of this stuff will be cut out.
Okay.
So, we'll move into the temple in a little bit. And I'll show you some of that, too. So, you were asking. No, I didn't dissolve anything. I joined a temple in a garage in Fontana. If you're interested in these stories, just listen to the earlier episodes. Skip a bit, Brother Maynard. I've told parts of a few stories, but I haven't gotten to the point. He builds a temple, and he's building it the way he thinks a temple ought to be built. And he's building it with the facade being presented to him. So he builds his order, he builds his temple, thinking that it's a good order, And so the members think it's a good order. And then once he realizes it's not, then he's kind of keeping quiet. Meanwhile, the membership is still excited as hell to be doing the Golden Dawn, And he's just kind of yeah, no, it's good. But fucking this guy over here, So it all came to a head between 2009 and 2011. And in 2011, Chicago basically led the revolution. But there was a guy in Denver who is the most senior of the revolution. He's my teacher.
So the shit hit Savannah in 2011.
Oh, yeah. 2011 March. Skip a bit, Brother Maynard. Nick Farrell, all these people started chiming in, no, he can't. And I'm like, fuck you people. No, we're throwing him out. He's a shit. You have no idea how much of a shit he is. We've got to... Skip a bit, Brother Maynard. My teacher. Where did I leave off? I don't know. Which story?
So Thelma Levine was one of the philosophy teachers, and she had a television show on called From Socrates to Sartre. And another one of my professors is now a bioethicist. He's major, Dr. Moreno. the teachers there were just amazing.
This was George Washington
George
University?
Washington University, yeah.
Is it all right for me to ask around what year that was?
In the 80s, early
Okay.
80s.
Okay.
Before I became a punk rocker.
Nice.
After college, I was married when I was in college, and after college I got divorced, and at that point I could do anything that I wanted to do in the entire world, and so I became a bouncer in a punk rock nightclub.
Nice. That's fun.
I was 27, I guess.
That's sort of like joining the army, but more fun.
Well, I'd already been in the Air Force.
Oh, nice.
So, which is how I got the job, because I had been trained. One of my specialty codes in the Air Force was as a law enforcement person, riding around on the base, directing traffic, and standing out at the gate and waving people in. That's one of the things that I did.
Yeah.
But it looks good on paper. So if you want to be a bouncer, they want somebody with some experience and being able to handle people. Right.
Yeah.
But I think I actually learned more in the nightclub than I did doing that job in the service, because there's so much drama all the time that you're dealing with. It's really about psychology.
Yeah.
It's not about how big you are and how badass you are. It's whether you can handle the mentality of a drunk person.
Right. Oh, man. Yeah, that's why, hence my car being wrecked right now. I really wanted to hit that guy.
Skip a bit, Brother Maynard.
And for a while I wanted to, look him in the eye and say, let's you and I fight until one of us lies dying. And just see if he goes for it.
Are you good at that?
No.
Oh.
No, I might be the one lying dying, but it'd be worth it. No, I used to watch Fight Club over and over when I was like, going through a divorce. I got married to this girl, and it didn't work out, and so I started riding my bike way too fast and crashing into things and watching Fight Club over and over and getting into the idea of. And then that guy that I mentioned earlier that made the furniture was being particularly more of an asshole than usual one day, and so I squared off to him, and then he's like, he said something like, hey, if you're going to square off to me, then you better fucking have something to back it up. I'm like, okay, let's go outside and fight. And then he backed off. And then I kept asking him, I'm like, and he's like, I'm really sorry, you're right, I was being a dick. He gives me a hug, and he's like, are we cool now? I'm like, yeah, but do you want to go fight? Seriously, because I've hated you for a long time. Like, I love you, but let's go fight. I'm like, can we? I just really want to punch you in the face, like, you can do it too.
See, I have a hard time imagining being in a group doing work like that with people that you don't like.
I know,
let
right?
alone love.
That's why groups are almost impossible, because someone's going to break up. Someone's going to have a fight.
But boy,
but it's a test.
Good.
It's a test, of your alchemy, being able to. It's like a job, like someone rubs you the wrong way, but you got to work together. But I mean, it's even more so in an occult order, because you've got to be Hierophant and Hieros together for 6 months, and you've got to have rehearsals and call each other and arrange things and arrange potlucks together, and you hate each other, and you used to date, but now she's fucking the guy that you introduced her to, and goddamn that bitch.
It's too bad this isn't being recorded.
Oh, it is being recorded.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. That happens.
You sneaky bastard.
Over and over, yeah.
Sneaky bastard. I thought that was off.
Oh. Well, let me show you.
We had a group. We had a group in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
My friend, my best friend at the time, William Kiesel, and I were looking for a place to live. No, fine. And so we got a house in Ballard, and we made that into a temple. We called it the Wizard's Lair.
Nice.
William was known as being the town wizard, and I sort of followed along in his shadows.
Mm-hmm.
But we both wore fedoras, and when we went around town, it was the two wizards.
Well, I was wearing a fedora in 2006.
This was about 2006.
Yeah. Oh, sweet.
And
awesome. No, I was alone. I was the fedora guy. I was a weirdo. I didn't know I was in your order, asteroid.
But we had some friends. Naha was one of them. And Another friend was named Tippett. A lot of them were in the restaurant business, bartenders or nightclub performers even. Naha was a DJ in Seattle, pretty famous.
Nice.
I think it was Tippett's idea that we should have a salon where we would get together once a week and talk about things that interested us.
A salon, like a hair salon?
Like a salon like they had in Paris in fin de siècle times, around the
different usage of salon.
Where Gertrude Stein Gertrude Stein had a salon.
Okay.
Where our artists would come and she would just entertain them. They'd have tea and chat and.
Well, I'd like to have a salon.
That kind of salon.
Nice. Yeah.
And so we started that. And on the very first night, it was in my apartment. It was on Broadway on Capitol Hill. The very first night, one of the people that was invited to come couldn't come because one of our mutual friends had overdosed the night before in Portland. And the whole night was just full of crazy drama like that sort of set the stage for what was to come. There was just something really powerful going on. And William really didn't know these people at all. They were people that I knew, that I had invited. And we ended up trying to comfort this one guy because this was his roommate and his best friend. But we ended up with 7 people, William, myself, and then 5 people. So we had a nice number to work with. It wasn't the 13, but 7's a good number. And William and I proceeded to teach classes to the 5 neophytes. And it wasn't really a formal thing. It's just we were sharing our knowledge because both of us have very eclectic backgrounds, magically. Some of our backgrounds overlap, but I've got a little bit of Golden Dawn, and I've got a little OT over here, and a little shamanism over here, and Native American spirituality, and a lot of eclectic things. But since I was a philosophy major, all of these things interested me.
Yeah. And
I didn't want to put all my money in one pot.
You're a mercurial.
Yeah. So we taught these classes. Naha was one of them, and we did some really powerful work too. And we all liked each other. We all loved each other. That's what I was getting at. I can't imagine being in a magical working group with people that you don't like. In fact, that you hate.
Well, there's cliques. You end up with a get together that only certain people know about. At a certain place, certain house, and it's kind of inappropriate. Because you're in 5-6, you shouldn't be hanging out with people outside the portal, and they're all smoking pot. And so when rumor gets back and someone hears about it, then you get a talking to. And I just fucking disagree with the fucking concept of saying that I shouldn't party with the outer order, so I just kept doing it and ignoring when they would tell me to stop. And so, whatever. I think that across the board unilaterally, maybe there's half a person that would agree that it was bad for me to be hanging out with the outer order in a social context like that. And everyone would unanimously agree that it was a very positive thing. And it's even kind of cathartic for some people now that I'm coming out and being so open about what I'm doing. And not only that, but taking the curtains down and symbolically opening the windows. Literally and symbolically opening the windows while I'm doing my rituals so that the neighborhood can see and hear what I'm doing. I think it's cathartic for people that knew me behind closed doors in a dark and creepy place that they felt just as ashamed as I did for being connected to. And so it's a healing process. I'm sharing the healing that I've gone through already with people who probably went through it in a different way because they didn't get as deep into it as I did, for one thing. And they already healed by having time go by. They left years ago,
and then they got interested in other things. But now, out of the blue, they can have this part that's buried deep down get healed, and everybody, even the people that like maybe resist the idea of all these walls coming down are going to listen to it because they want to hear what everybody else is listening to. They want to hear what their students are listening to so that they can be prepared to answer questions about it later, which is great. It's a great position to be in, as far as someone who wants to heal and to use whatever I can, whether it be technology or sticks. If it's something my hand can do, my mouth can do, that'll help people, then that's good. And it's selfish. It's entirely selfish because I like to feel good about myself when I'm going to sleep at night and when I wake up in the morning. And I have things to feel guilty about because I have a temper, and it's nice when I can do more good in a day than I do harm. And that's why I'm vegan too, is because I'd eat a hamburger and I yell at somebody and I feel like a piece of shit who didn't deserve to breathe the air, And now I eat broccoli and make a podcast and help people discover their inner priestess, and I feel pretty good about myself. And so it's entirely selfish and egotistical in its motivation. But I want to show you my temple. I set it up just for you. But if you don't mind, if you could please remove your shoes. Please remove your shoes. White, white, white is the color of our carpet. Producers, Melrose. Anyway.
This is your father right here?
Oh, let me introduce you to my ancestors real quick. Okay, so first, see this train?
Yes.
Zuidam in Dutch, Saddam in America.
Skip a bit, Brother Maynard.
The geometric structure of this skirt that he has on, though. We're talking about the rendering of Hermes Trismegistus
in Manly P. Hall's Secret Teachings of All Ages.
Teachings of the Ages.
Yeah. The girdle. The symbolism of the girdle is Venus. This is Venus being worn by the philosophic Mercury. The colors appear to be. Let me turn up the lights a bit. The colors appear to be green, red, and white.
This is his emerald tablet.
Oh, and there's a lion and a snake. That's the reveal. The lion and the snake are found together on the strength card. The path of Tet. And but the path of Tet is ordinarily found up here between the shoulders. But in his case, it's between the knees. So that's really interesting. I don't know why that is, but he's got a symbol of the supernals where his Tiferet center should be. So the whole thing is moved down. So his head, where our head ends in Da'at, and then the supernals are above us, he's got the supernals in his solar plexus, and his head goes above, just like the serpent Nehushtan that reaches beyond Keter. And he's got his feet on the dragon, and it seems like
that the head is in
infernal dragon. Well, normally, like here, this is a tree of life that I made. Well, it's the Kircher tree, but it's my rendering of it. I expect people to know Hebrew, so I don't pussyfoot around with any of this romaji. What was I saying? Yeah, so the left, according to Knowledge Lecture 5, Microcosmic Man, Magical Mirror of the Universe. The left arm and hand is Chesed, the right arm and hand is Geburah. And then, that's true, because in that same document, it says the left and right brain correspond to Chokmah and Binah. But I would tend to think of them as being here, like up and to the right would be Binah, up and to the left would be Chokmah, and then up above is Keter. So our head ends up, in Da'at. And then all of this is going on down here. So that's one perspective. From another perspective, we're all down here in Malkut, and this is the astral plane up here. And then we float. When we die, maybe we go up to here to the Bardo, and cycle back around. But that's another perspective. Another perspective, my favorite perspective, is that you and I are here. And then actually we're beyond that. Beyond Keter, there's three veils of negative existence, and they're Ein, Ein Sof, and Ein Saf Or. Ein is there is no. Ein Lohem, there is no bread. Bait Lohem, Bethlehem, where Jesus was born. Ein, there is no. Ein Sof, you know about these. Limitless light. Ein Sof Or, limitlessness, limitless light. So there we are. And we're looking at our reflection in a puddle. And we've been looking at it for so long that we forgot that that's what we're doing. And we think that we're all the little lights dancing around. And some of the lights appear for a little while and they disappear for a little while. And so we get to feel all kinds of weird emotions about things appearing and disappearing. So that's like when we wake up in the morning, we put this on like a glove. And then we have these hands here in Malkut and we can do stuff, you know? And that's the thing.
I've never heard it described like that.
Yeah, I like to describe it that way. That's the L.A. sanctuary teaching of the Tree of Life.
See, lately...
Let me light the charcoal so that we can have some good incense in a minute.
Lately, my thing has been trying to resolve or combine the Eastern notion of chakras with the Western tree.
Okay.
And that's why I felt that your interview with Poke resonated with me so much.
Oh, yeah. Well, he described his system. I can describe, the system that I'm aware of. Yeah, come on in if you'd like. So, that's great. I like what he described very much.
I looked at his video on YouTube where he talks about that, and he has a diagram, and what is it on the left hand side? The light's coming down, and then on the right hand side it goes back up again. He straightened out the Sephirah that are on the flaming sword into a straight line, and he sort of tries to reconcile it.
Yeah. Well,
in a way.
The method that I was raised with is neither here nor there. It's Tibetan in origin by way of Italian theosophy, I guess. You know Andrew de Bassano. Well, you don't know him, but you know of him. That's who I'm chasing after that, because that's the method I grew up with. And I can show you that method if you'd like. I don't know how much time we have. I know Janie wants us out at 8:30, but the other paradigm that I'm familiar with is that the idea that, okay, there's no problem reconciling the 1,000-petaled lotus, the Om vibrating above the crown, with Keter, the crown, Eheye, I will be, the name of God, the source of all. Those two overlap pretty well, as far as I can tell. So that part of the middle pillar and that part of any kind of chakra work, perfect. They go together. Now, as far as the third eye, this is my opinion, and it was the opinion of my proctor, very honored Feder, AKHV, who I need to keep anonymous because he's an Episcopal priest now. But he and whoever he got it from thought of this as being Yah, the Chokmah right here in the third eye. And the divine name we use in the middle pillar for Da'at is actually the divine name of Binah. So we have Binah here, but we skip Chokmah altogether in the middle pillar ritual. The philosophy being that we're vibrating the names in the middle pillar, not the side pillars, except in the case of the darkest of the black pillar. What? So I like to add in Yah. So we're vibrating Eheye, and then Yah, the gray one, and then for the throat, Yod He Vav He Elohim. Now, as far as a connection between East and West there, the throat chakra, I forget the name in Sanskrit, but it has to do with creativity and expression. When light comes into being, first it's Keter, which is neither female nor male. and it's not moving. It's not doing. It's just is. It's being. It's the future unfolding before us in all levels. And so when it unfolds, it's like the fool. It's like the man going off the cliff into, what's next? Well, everything. Just Chokmah. It's heaven of Asaya. The physical manifestation of Chokmah is all the stars and galaxies of the universe. So whatever that's the physical manifestation of, Chokmah is. And so the Big Bang, boom, And then what? Well, Binah, the womb, the space in between that gets created too. Maybe the dark matter, but no, I won't go there. Let's just say the empty space. It starts to form. It starts to create for the form of the triangle. The only things that last take the form of the triangle. Like and it's in the Chaldean oracles, in the Practicus grade of the Golden Dawn. Everything has the Trinity in it, the triangle in it. And then, of course, scientifically, we can look at that on the atomic level, at least, if not on other levels. When it gets into quantum, then when it goes non-Newtonian, chaos magic, and it was a little bit more appropriate. But since we're working with the practical Newtonian universe, well, anyway, what was I talking about? So Keter, Chokmah, Binah. So what comes out of your mouth? Well, the communication, the sense of expression. It's the things that come from inspiration that fit the triangle. That's the expression. That's what can be expressed. We can't express part of a triangle, So that's what I'd say. And then for Anahata and Manipura, that's where it gets a little different and a little complicated, and maybe even a little interesting as far as looking at the group psychology of East and West. If you consider that in the middle pillar ritual, this is Tiferet here in the solar plexus, but in the East, this is love. This is universal love and healing energy, and this is kind of the ego. This is kind of the sense of opinion and individual identity. But in Golden Dawn practice, we link those together as one. Tiferet, we call it. So your sense of individual identity, it's even called imagination. So that's interesting. And so the East, I think it's good to be able to practice both and to think of, okay, this is just love. And this is my ego here. So my ego is below the love, But in Golden Dawn, it's just, this is my center of my being, and I must surrender all of it, to the light above. And then what a lot of people ends up happening is they kind of get it wrong or upside down. And then the opposite of Tiferet, the opposite energy, is the disputers. And so, to Tagiraron. And see how big of a nerd I am. I can't say Tagiraron without vibrating. Or Lilith without saying Adonai Haaretz. Or Thamael without saying hey, or Avalokitha. Never mind. I'm just showing off now. Shit. Okay, so that's interesting. But I'd say that Yod He Vav He Elo Avida'ad and Tiferet energy works for Anahata and it works for Manipura. That's how I approach it. But I also approach them as separate, distinct entities. But instead of like Vam or any of that, I use O and Ah. And the way my dad taught me was when you digest something, or when you are grappling with an idea, you're trying to figure something out, and then it clicks, and you go, oh! You formulate your opinion, and that's you. That's your individual identity. That's what you have as your will here in Manipura. And when you digest some food, and your stomach's like, what is this? I don't know. Oh, those enzymes. Here we go. Okay, now it's working. And that's the same thing on a different level. And that's very interesting because then you realize, you start to connect with how many different organisms are involved in the digestion process and how many different humans are involved in the mental digestion process through communication and all that stuff. And so, yeah, you can really groove on some of that stuff. And I think East and West, there's not a one-to-one correspondence, but sometimes you can find a lot of overlap, I guess.
There's different opinions.
Yeah.
Jyoti's teaching a class on the chakras at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
and I was looking at one of her textbooks, and or one of her reference books, and there's a page on the Tree of Life in there, and this person's opinion was that there is a correspondence, and that the ones that correspond where there are two sephra, those are the yin and the yang of that chakra.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And when I was thinking about that, that made sense to me. When Jyoti and I did a ritual where we did the middle pillar, and I did the middle pillar as I was taught, basically the Golden Dawn version,
Mm-hmm.
and then she took over when we got down to the feet, and then she brought the energy back up.
Nice.
With the chakras, she would vocalize the mantra for each of the chakras. I forget what they are exactly. Yum, and Yum is the heart. Lum.
Speaking
Lum,
of the
Yum.
serpent Nehushtan. Yeah. You know about Nehushtan?
No, I don't think so.
I'll go get it. I'll just wait here. I'll be right back. Well, you're right. You're right. They're often secret, but the chiefs of the third order, those are the elusive ones. That are they human? Are they angels? What are they? Oh, we're not allowed to talk about that if you get a culty one. Anyway, well, Nehushtan is this serpent. So he originates. Actually, the tail should be down here,
Okay.
and he touches every path and none of the Sephiroth.
Right.
And his head, actually, in a proper representation, would go up above Keter.
How does he get that name?
The Bible. It was the name of the brass serpent that was raised in the wilderness by Moses. It's the serpent of wisdom. And it's presented in the grade of Theoricus in the Golden Dawn ceremony. Oh, and I'm not allowed to reveal that, except by permission of the chiefs of the Second Order. Edward, can I have permission? Yes, Edward, you can have permission. Okay. Hey, Edward, can I open my windows and show the whole neighborhood? Yeah, you can, Edward. Okay, cool. So it's legit. So I'm actually not like Crowley.
And now you know
I'm
not
just
a
following my
Theoricus.
own rules. Yeah.
That was the test.
No, it's not. Rob, he was saying that my page made him feel inadequate, and he had read some book where they said don't do it half-assed, and I was like, oh, I don't mean to make people feel that way. I only want to inspire people. I don't want to make people feel like underachievers. I'm sharing this with you because it's a precious experience that I had once when I was young, and then I stood here as the Hierophant and explained this fucking thing over and over and over and over to every initiate that went through the grades for many years. I mean, I wasn't always the Hierophant, but I was a lot. And anyway, so the sword is the flashing sword, go wham, 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 and then the serpent.
Well, I have regarded the Golden Dawn. Is that in there?
Yeah, it should be in the
name of a snake?
There's a few things in there that I was looking for.
I knew about this.
Yeah.
I didn't know about.
In the Theoricus initiation, you got to read those initiations because a lot of important data is given in the initiations that isn't gone into in necessarily any other lectures or in diagrams. But the words of the Hierophant, the words of the officers when they're speaking to the candidate, it's like you got to sit there with a note and write, because we would hear it over and over and over and over and over. So you'd start to pick up on little things, and then you'd be like, well, that turn of phrase, was that the right turn of phrase? Was it this or is it that? Well, in this they say this, and in this temple they say that. So you start to really get to know the scripts and stuff like that. But yeah, it's Nehushtan.
Huh. Cool.
I had a friend.
That is a little piece of trivia that Naha would love.
But yeah, that reminded me of you and Jyoti, like you were doing the Sephiroth, and then she brought everyone up the paths. And the further deeper symbolism is that the lamen that is worn on the breast of the one who has been osirified, the symbolism is you become one with Christ. And so you write Jesus Christ, God and man. Notice mine's blank. And your secret name. So this is worn on a white robe. I have a Catholic robe over there. So the center of it, you have, from the Sefer Yetzirah, it describes the mother letters, the single letters, and the double letters. The mother letters are Aleph, Mem, and Shin. The single letters are the planetary ones, and the double letters are the planetary ones, and the single letters are the zodiacal ones. And there's a total of 22, and it lines up with the major arcana. And so here you have the paths And there's 22, and they line up with the major arcana. So the serpent, by touching all of the paths and none of the Sephirot, he is a perfect expression of the microcosmos. So 0 equals 0. It's the same symbol. It's this rose that symbolizes that perfect equilibrium of all the forces of a human being is the same as this snake. So, but you got to have both. This sword that's thrown down by the hand of God by way of the angels, and the serpent is what makes it back up. And so the sword keeps you from, it guards Eden from the fallen Adam, but the serpent is the wily, the rascally one. People think serpent, oh, that's evil, but what about the other serpents? There's more than one serpent in the Bible. Hello. Moses had a staff turn into a serpent. Was that an evil serpent? Was that the evil serpent? Was that the one and only evil serpent? I think there's a little bit of a one-to-one correspondence between the Kundalini serpent and this serpent. And
Moses was initiated into the Egyptian mysteries, isn't that correct?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I'm sure.
Temple of Isis.
I don't know who they were worshiping at the time. That'd be an interesting. I have some friends who went to school, and went to learned all that stuff. But I don't know what was it ISIS? Was it? I don't know what they were.
I think that's what they called it. Yeah.
Because sometimes they were worshiping Set.
Later became Serapis.
Okay.
Or there was overlap between Serapis and Isis.
And then when Alexander came in and just put his face on the Osiris symbol, then there was all that wonderful syncretization. That basically the Isis that when in the Golden Dawn paradigm when we talk about Isis, that's post-Alexandrian, or really it's Alexandrian Isis. It's not post at all. It's straight up Alexandrian, as far as I can tell, where they were bringing together. And that seems to be what Mary, in large part, was based off of, and it was this momentum that had got going when Alexander reinvigorated the Egyptian love of religion and worshiping human beings that are standing right in front of them, and then hence Cleopatra, several generations later, still riding that wave, the last, to ride that wave, really, for the nation of Egypt. And now we're riding the wave today, having someone invoking Isis and not being worshipped, but it's more refined now. It's more the idea of democratizing it and having every 6 months you take turns being the person who everybody says, "Holy art thou, Lord of the universe," But still, it does a number on. It can do a number on the ego. But if you just do it just right, because what you're supposed to do is when all of those people, you have a room full of people, and you hear, when you hear the whole church going, "We believe in one God, the Father, Almighty, Maker of heaven," and it just sounds like the board, like, "We are the board, resistance is futile." When you have that same voice saying, "Holy art thou, Lord of the universe," and they're all pointing to this point right here, yeah, you got to do something with that. You can't just be like, "Yeah, that's right." Because you got to sublimate it and
whole room doing kirtan when everybody's totally into it.
Yeah.
Have you ever done kirtan?
No.
Oh my God, man.
Yeah.
You just get chills.
Yeah.
And in my experience, when you get these just rolling chills, that means that's the presence of spirit. And then Saul, who becomes Paul, he then somehow is exposed to the Egyptian mysteries, and so he appropriates the Osiris story, and that becomes the Jesus reincarnation story.
Oh yeah, he was a scholar. And they were right next to Egypt. And Alexandria was still there, wasn't it? Yeah.
Albeit with the burned out church.
So when you look at
Actually, that came. Library. That came later.
Yeah, but looking at 1993, when the internet was brand new, you could still dupe a room full of people into, not researching something. You could say, "We're the one true Golden Dawn," and people would be like, "Okay, cool." And then, but by 95, 96, people would be like, actually, I looked online and there's 4 different One True Golden Dawns, and so that was a heck of a difference. And so looking back then, as a cynic, Paul had access to literacy, he had access to knowledge, he was traveling, he was he was in a position where he was appointed to oversee the execution of the man who kept insisting on talking about Jesus on the steps of the temple. What was his name? Stephanos, Saint Stephanos. And he killed him, rocks to the head. And then that was, when he started thinking, what am I doing? I gotta maybe do something different than this. And then right shortly after that, he saw the light and all that DMT episode he had where he fell off his horse and couldn't see for a while. And then he was on board with the Jesus program. Changed his name and all that. It was Roman name.
It was ayahuasca.
Yeah. And Luke and the Romans and
they didn't have DMT. They didn't have
right.
glass pipes.
Oh no, we make it. We make it in our head.
That's yes.
So the theory is that when people describe these intense religious experiences, especially when you're working with energy, and you say at a certain point, the horns go off, and you go over that edge, and it helps if you drink an MAO inhibitor first. But anyway, is it MAO or MOA? MOA inhibitor. That's what it is. I always screw that up. Like passion flower leaves. I used to drink those and then do Kundalini work or do raising the chakra energy.
I guess you can get the ayahuasca bark, but that's not going to do you any good because you don't have the inhibitors, right?
Well, yeah, you could smoke it, but yeah, no, I was just doing the inhibitors and then producing my own DMT. So it'd be like putting the piano pedal down on those bursts of experience. Because if you go, oh, there it is, oh, it went away. It's like when you're astral projecting. And then you go, oh my God, I'm astral projecting, and then you wake up. It's the neocortex coming in and like a bull in a china shop just coming in and fucking up a natural experience. Just like humans, coming in and going, it'd be nice here, a city like we have back in Kansas. And it's like, but there's hills, it's San Francisco. Oh, fuck it, just do it like we did in Kansas, What was I talking about? Yeah, so yeah, if you can put the pedal down, and then you get that experience. It goes, and it's instead of just, oh, there it went. It's like, and so there's so you can kind of get to the next breath and to the next burst of DMT, and then you can start to get a cumulative effect. I found that after I smoked it, a lot of it, I was able to key into it really easily. I haven't been actively connecting with that idea, but I was pretty actively connecting with it for a while and walking around insisting I could smell it on all the plants and stuff like that. But I still smell it now and then, but now I just take it for granted rather than being excited about it. Like, oh, that's DMT, I know what that is. But anyway. So,
I don't know anything about that.
It's great stuff.
Because it's illegal.
Oh, yeah, of course. And we're recording.
Yes, exactly.
Here, I'll put a little more on here. Do you want to tour the temple, or?
Okay.
Sure. So
this is one of the most elaborate temple I've seen.
Oh yeah, it's Golden Dawn Plus. I could point out the elements that are specifically Golden Dawn if it's not obvious. Okay. So I'll start here. Should I start at the central altar or start in the east? I'll start in the east. So let's go to the east.
And that is looking out east that way. Must be.
So here in the east this is the Watchtower of the East.
Right.
John D. Edward Kelly, Mathers. This is not normally here. This is Janie and my air daggers. So in the order we came from, these were made in the grade of Theoricus. In the original Golden Dawn, you didn't make them until you were in the inner order. And it goes together with these. In fact, you need this to consecrate this, and you need this to consecrate this. And you need a consecrated one to do a consecrated one. You need a consecrated one to do a consecrated one. So that begs the question, well, how do you get the consecration? If you need a consecrated one to consecrate a consecrated one, you need a consecrated one to consecrate a consecrated one. And the answer is, well, you consecrate that, then you consecrate that, then you consecrate that, and you consecrate that, and you consecrate that, and you consecrate that, and eventually it's consecrated. So it's like a motor, you know. So it's like you gotta keep doing the work. So I gotta get back into it if I'm gonna have a consecrated dagger. But anyway, this one's never been consecrated. Over here, Vimalamidra. He, in 800, Padmasambhava wanted to bring Buddhism to Tibet. And so he sent word to India to these particular monks that were adept at Vajrayana Buddhism and very, very, very literate and geniuses with language. And among them was Vimalamidra. And so he came across the border, risked his life and limb, because India was jealously guarding their teachers and their gurus and their scholars and their Buddhism. According to the story, I don't buy the whole story. But anyway, so he came to Tibet and stayed there for a number of years and translated all the his portion that he was given to translate into Tibetan as he was learning Tibetan, or maybe he already knew it, I don't know. He translated it from Indian to Tibetan. And then he continued on to China. And then he learned Chinese and he translated it into Chinese. And then Kukai, a guy from Japan, was like, I want to learn some real cool Buddhism. And he's looking around in China. And then meanwhile, this guy, they were like contemporaries. So he's from India and he's in this place in China. And then Kukai comes in and so there was this brief point where there was a lot of esoteric Buddhism or Vajrayana Buddhism in China. And so at that was the time when Kukai came in. And when he left, he went and built Mount Koyasan in Japan, which is just this mountaintop utopia of esoteric Buddhism. And then right afterward, the emperor came in and banned esoteric Buddhism in China. And so as a result, we have Tibetan Buddhism. And then we have this odd phenomenon where one of the kinds of Buddhism in Japan looks just like Tibetan Buddhism, except instead of going, you know, they bang on drums and they Hanya Rami, you know, it's like this same thing, same words, different language, and same practices, same mandalas, you know, nuances. I mean, I'd like to get to learn more about both. But anyway, so Vimalamidra, he died in China. He translated much of the Vajrayana Sutras into both Tibetan and Chinese, and helped it make it all the way into Japan. And then he died, and then about 100 years after he died, they made this statue. In 1,000 years ago, they made this statue. Then, in 1919, my father's father drove the very first fucking oil rig up the Yangtze River, got kidnapped and held for ransom, and then they suppressed the bandits, and he got all the right papers and made friends with all the right people in the jungle to let him go up the fucking Yangtze River so that America could sell oil in China. And somewhere along the line, the story I heard was that he went into a monastery and he was like, wow, this is all so beautiful. And they were like, wow, we've never seen white people. And he's like, have you seen this? And he showed them a watch. This is kind of my version of the story because I made him sound like kind of a dick, you know. And they're like, wow, what is it? And he's like, it keeps time. It goes round and round. And they're like, whoa. And so what do you want for it? Oh, he's like, I'll take that, I'll take that, I'll take that. And then he sent most of it to his sister Mary. And so I have some cousins in New Zealand who remember growing up seeing all this stuff from China, just all these priceless antiquities in their grandma's house. And she was Mary Lane, who ran an ice cream factory in Texas in the 40s, 50s, and 60s or something like that.
And there's some monk out there in China who has this watch.
It's not working anymore.
Of the white guy, the white devil, who came in.
Yes. But I mean, that might have not have been exactly what happened, because my dad didn't know. He was 6 years old when his dad died, so he got kind of like. I try to go to my aunt for real stories, because she was 14 when their dad died, and so she grew up in China and she got to actually see stuff with her eyes, and so like I listen to her when it comes to stories about my grandpa, and I take a grain of salt but I'm telling you the story, and I guess I'm telling the podcast the story. But anyway, so my grandpa, this was up on his mantle for 30 years while he lived in China, in and around Shanghai and then Western China. And then in 1940, he got on a boat the something famous President Cleveland. It's at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean now. And my dad was a baby, and this was among the things they brought back with them. And then when my dad passed away in 1993, my stepmom decided to put my dad's ashes in it. So, meet my dad. Hear that? Inside a 1,000-year-old Buddha, the likes of which can only be found at the Met in New York. There's a set, and one's missing, and it's right here. And we made a friend. Oh, this is the banner of the East, the symbol of the perfected work. You have the tree of life. You have the air and water harmoniously together with Tiferet. Now here in Malkut, we can't see Keter, right? We can only see the next level up, which is the path of Tav. So there's a T here. And it's white because the light of Keter comes through the path of Tav into Malkut. And so we say, Holy art thou, Lord of the universe! Holy art thou, which nature hath not formed! Holy art thou, the vast and the mighty one, ruler of the light and the darkness. Or if you're Paul Foster Case, Holy art thou... Well, never mind. It's okay, that's the banner of the East. Like, there's more symbolism I could go into, but I won't. This is a lotus wand. So you have spirit, secret name, 12 signs of the zodiac. Malkut, you have the lotus of Isis. You have the little orange dot where the spirit of philosophic Mercury enters into the top of it. And you use it for everything. This actually, like, if you don't actually need any of these if you have this, but these are fun anyway to have. So okay, let's move over to this side. Here we have Yishi Tsogal. You remember I mentioned Padmasambhava hired that guy to, well, this was his girlfriend in the end. She was
liked mustaches with mustache wax on curled up at the ends, right?
Padmasambhava? Or? Yeah. Yeah.
He's known for having the mustache.
Yeah. And the eye, the third eye, and the big, he's like frowning and grinning at the same time, and doing this with a dorja in his hand. But this was his girlfriend at the end, his consort. He taught her everything. Her history of him is the history we have. She grew up and became kind of a queen of Tibetan Buddhism figure. And so she was instrumental in the establishing Tibetan Buddhism. But yeah, he was the creepy old man, and she was the 15-year-old. But I don't. Okay, so that's Yishi Sofa. I really like her. She was in my yoga room for a long time.
Yishi Sofa.
It's I don't know how to pronounce her name. Yishi, Y-E-S-H-E, and then last name T-S-Y-O-G-A-L, something like that. So I'd have to talk to a Tibetan to know how that's pronounced. But okay,
so you're mixing Tibetan Buddhism
and Japanese Buddhism and Chinese esoteric extinct Buddhism. So here we have the temple seals, all the temple seals here for one of the lineages, all the temple seals of Pure Land Buddhism over there, and then we have the temple seals of the temples that I went to at Janie, and then including the temple seal of Kanzoin Temple, ZenYoga.org, right down the street on Terrace 49, and your friends down at House of Intuition ought to visit this guy because he is a old Japanese guy who's a 62nd patriarch of Soto Zen, teaching yoga and Zen and vegan cooking. Half a mile that way. Just, who knew? He's been there since 1980. And I asked him if he does Goshuins. And so he put his Goshuin in my book right across from Kamakura, which was where this Buddha, the giant Buddha that this is based on, it's a beach city south of Tokyo.
Do you have an upcoming interview with him?
Oh, yeah. To be a yogi, he's going to be number 3. This is from his temple. This is what we do after we do yoga. We sit in lotus position and go through this. And, love that guy. So yeah, in here, I'm basically mixing Japanese, all forms of Japanese Buddhism, but kind of specifically esoteric forms. But I've also got, you might not expect,
Grant them thy holy churches in peace, safety, honor, health, and length of days, to rightly define the word of thy truth, and all mankind. Remember, O Lord, all Orthodox episcopate who rightly define the word of thy truth. Remember, O Lord, my unworthiness also. By the multitude of thy compassions, forgive me my every transgression. So there were those years, and I keep that here. So I have my Western religion on the east side of my southern altar, and I have my Eastern religion on the south side of my southern altar, just to keep things funny and balanced and yin-yangy. And I have it all on the southern altar because in the vault of the Adepti, the symbol of fire is the crucifix, which at its root is a symbol of knowledge, because the knowledge to make fire, the knowledge of two sticks, the knowledge of, and then, later knowledge, and all the knowledge in here, like there's knowledge buried in this, symbol. So I have my, the Passion of the Christ, the sort of that religious aspect here, and then also here, and I bring that same passion and devotion to Zen Buddhism and the various forms of Japanese Buddhism that I've been practicing, that I give to the Orthodox Church, and whether they like it or not. That house is round. My great-great-grandmother, who taught fundamentalist Christian missionaries who were going to go make fundies in Korea, insisted that the house be round, and she taught downstairs in the room below here. So anyway, this is much simpler. This is the West. Here, just for today, I put the Kamakura Buddha, and this is Shakyamuni Buddha. Actually, he's the only representation in the temple right now of the actual Buddha. The one played by Keanu Reeves. Because this one, I always thought that was Buddha, but then I found out later from this guy in what's that?
This Buddha is littler.
Yeah.
Than Keanu.
It's what?
It's littler. It's a little Buddha, more little than Keanu.
Oh, that's true. But yeah, anyhow, it was a joke. So this I made in ceramics class. The symbolism is, this is the fires of the infernal fires of creation. This is the waters above the firmament, and this is the firmament. So you can see implied in this symbol the Aquarian symbol, the waters of the astral plane, which include the material universe, and the waters of creation that isn't polluted. And then you have, ideally us, kind of when we elevate to here, when we elevate to Tiferet, then we can actually stand in between the divine world above and the polluted, I'm being silly and saying it's polluted, but it kind of is. It's like if you think of the waters of creation, the pure crystalline waters of creation, and then you go into the one where it sort of smells like stale beer and sweat, and there's a lot of neon beer signs and stuff like that. It's polluted. There's no other word for it. But also, it has character. It's culture. I don't know, all the compliments. Is it PC? Do I have to be PC about the manifest universe? No. Anyway, so, okay, moving along. This is, yes, Horus guards the temple. And carries a sword, banner of the West. And when you're pathworking in Golden Dawn, if you come up against something, it's to empower the candidate. They're like, oh, but the demons, I'm afraid to imagine things. That's why I watch TV all the time. And so it's like, no, just stand as the Hyrus. And if anything gives you any shit, just wah, and say, And so, yeah, that's fun. In the Grade of Philosophus, you get to be Hyrus and guard the temple and say things like, I am fortitude, and I am the master of darkness. And carry a red sword. And
Did you make that? Or?
No, I didn't make the sword, but I painted it. I lately have been working with these guardians of the temple, one of the Japanese systems, Tendai, in the Sanju Sangendo temple. There were 28 guardians that are derived from Hindu gods, all guarding the Buddha. And I was like, yes! So I've been bringing that into a Golden Dawn paradigm with a particular ritual called S4. This is a little cluttered, I admit. Now, though, you might wonder about the cup of water. Now, there's an incense over there. That is a companion with this. So before we do anything, when we do ceremony, we, in the old days, you'd go to all four corners and say, I purify thee with water. But in September of 1996, a new practice was adopted in the temple, which gave birth to all those other temples. And so all those other temples all practiced this practice. Incidentally, my mom was the Stylistes or Ma'ut installed at that equinox when they also introduced the new water purification. So she's the first person ever in history to ever go. Asperges me domine, sopoet mundibor, lavabis me et supernivem di alba bor. In a Golden Dawn temple, I should specify. There's probably, in churches, they've intoned that before, but not while doing a left, right, center, up, down, left, right, projection in a Ora Ma'ut God form. That my mom was the first. And then, anyway, so that's what that's about. That goes in the north because it's really an earth symbol, even though it's water. As I mentioned over there, you had all three of the elements they combined to make earth. That one's blue over there. This one really ought to be red on the bottom, yellow, and then blue at the top. But I'm not traditional Golden Dawn in this particular temple. This is a bunch of yen. It's earth, it's money, Japanese thing. So their money is, their money's better than ours. Anyway, so that brings us. Oh yeah. This is a bodhisattva, and I don't know his name, but I know that he's a bodhisattva because he has Buddha in his heart. And he's also very colorful and ornate, and I like keeping him over here in the north.
And then the lamans, both of your lamans.
Oh, this is a Zelator panicle. So this is used, for example, in the earth opening. You could use this to, do stuff. You hold it by the black on the Malkut because that's where the hand is, literally. So if you held it here, you'd be lying because that's not the actual manifest part. So that's where we hold it from. This is unpainted because it's James, and I'm relatively new to the system. Where I've been doing it for over 20 years at this point. Okay, so the central altar. Oh well, these are kakejikus. Oh, this was the sword that when Jamie and I were married, I wrote the wedding. And have you heard the priestess episode yet?
No.
Oh, okay, it's a good one. But at the beginning, you'll hear me do a sort of an invocation of Isis, and I used a lot of those words in our wedding ceremony. And so Isis, used this sword to marry us, and we knelt down, and she handed it to one of the priests, and the priest put it on my neck while I took my vows. And then the priest picked it up, handed it back to Isis. She handed it to the priestess, and the priestess held it on Janie's neck while she took her vows, and then gave it back to Isis. And then Isis sheathed it, and there was a guy behind her, behind the scenes, to take the sword away. And so now it's our very special sword that we only use when it's just the two of us.
It's a nice one.
Yeah, it's a Solomonic sword. Occasionally you'll see really serious magicians posing with theirs. It's not one of a kind.
Nice,
Jewish stuff.
Star of David on the hilt.
Yeah, and ISIS carrying it. They're like, what's going on? It's like, well, if you were Golden Dawn, you'd understand. Anyway, so then we have Yakin and Boaz. This is Pure Land Buddhism. Sorry, you heard that episode. Waterfall Aquarium, perhaps?
I haven't heard that one.
She gave me this kimono for my temple, She said that the pine tree is the symbol of strength and power, and it's always green, and it's tall and powerful, and the hawk is a symbol of steadfastness and strength, and so she wanted me to have this kimono, and I'm like, you're so sweet, and so now I use it when I do magic. Why not? Jesus, it's so cool. And then, but in this kimono sense, this is the underneath part and the belt part. So if I were to wear it as a classic kimono, then it would look more like that. But
Where's your samurai sword?
I don't have one. But I wear it in a way that actually resembles other swords. It resembles the chief adept when I put it over my regular white robe. That kimono. She also gave me this. She gave me this, and her family made this with indigo and bleach. It's the Hanya Shingyo, the Heart of Great Wisdom Sutra. And so I told her that in honor of her family, who has gifted my temple with all of this, I will honor Pure Land Buddhism in the temple, and I will perform the mantra that he said to perform. But I will do it on behalf of all beings, that all beings, guilty or not, can enter the Pure Land. So I'm doing it with more of a Padmasambhava, like Om Mani Padme Hum, saving all beings at once, kind of thing. Which, I mean, his message was so powerful. When they asked the Dalai Lama, he kind of pussyfoots around it. But the reason why this says Om Mani Padme Hum, and that says Om Mani Padme Hum, and on all those wheels it says Om Mani Padme Hum, or Hung in the old Tibetan, is because he told them that everybody suffers. Gods suffer. They eventually die and behold their own demise, and everybody forgets them. Demigods suffer, half-gods suffer. They go through all kinds of stuff. Humans, animals, hungry ghosts, those in the hells, everybody suffers. And that the goddess of compassion sees this suffering and has great compassion upon them. And if one person, but once, would say with all their hearts, Om Mani Padme Hum, then the gods would all be freed from this enslavement, and they would become, one with the infinite light and never have existed. And that for the Om, and for the Ma, all the demigods are freed and one with the light. And for the Ni, all the humans are never existed. And then the Ni Hum, the animals, the hungry ghosts, and those in the hells, there are no hells. It's all just light. And all you have to do is say Om Mani Padme Hum, and everybody was like, okay, master, and then they were like, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om. And then now it's like, it's been 1,200 years, and people are like, Dalai Lama, why do we keep saying Om Mani Padme Hum? And he's like, well, I don't know, does it make you feel good? It's funny. It's like, but they don't really get into the nitty gritty of
he didn't really
how
say
it all
that.
started. No, I'm making fun of. But no, he has other things to say. The interesting, deep things that have clearly been added since Padmasambhava's day about how it's actually very interesting because he says the Om, it contains all things good and bad, and so when we say Om Mani Padme Hum, we're moving toward compassion. We're moving toward wisdom and altruism, and choosing to embody the good in Om. And but Om itself isn't good or bad. It contains all. It's just the vibration of the universe. And so I thought that was a pretty profound explanation, actually. I shouldn't make fun of that. So the central altar, just for now, I've got the bell. If I had a child, I could say, this bell was from your father's father. This bell was from your mother's mother. But anyway, for now, I have to say, this bell was given to me by my father, and this bell was a gift from my wife's mother. Underneath this bell, I have a rock that came from Nanzenji in Kyoto, which is a Zen temple that was commissioned by the emperor when the emperor got way into Zen in the 1260s. Dogen was doing his whole missionary thing in the 1240s, where he was establishing Zen, and everybody was writing down everything he would say. And I believe in the 1230s, and he was actually in China learning it. Anyway, so then this is the bell that my dad and I would use for the third eye. Along with this was my dad's dorja. And the Karmapa, of course, is a young guy, but his previous incarnation gave my dad his initiation and these strings around his dorja. And this bell still has its middle. It's a different one. I use it for the heart now. And this is from the Heian Shrine, which is the largest Shinto shrine in Japan, as far as I know. And it's very touristy, but it's culturally important. Osaka was the capital by default, because when the Chinese people, by way of the Korean Peninsula, settled the Japanese island, they settled in Osaka. That was just where they were. And so that was the first capital. And then so the first I'm going to make a capital was Kyoto. And so it was made to be beautiful. It was made to embody everything the Japanese wished that they were and wanted to become. And in a way, they ended up overshooting the mark. It was like the whole time they were imitating their fantasized ideal of what they thought the Chinese were, And so when they would build things, it was very, very loyally based on on things that came from China, but they would do it with such a and that whole Shinto thing. Well, anyway, so I have the Shinto aspect here under the bell I use for the heart, and I have the Zen under the bell I use for the third eye. And I have no rock under this bell, but this is the bell that I use for Manipura. Good old ego gets its own bell. Because that's how I treat my ego. I don't kick my ego around like a lot of people do. I'm nice to my ego. I mean, it's not the fucking king of the universe, but it's like if I had a cat and the cat brought me a mouse, I wouldn't be like, bad kitty, you know. I mean, so I'm just like good kitty, you know, because I feel better when I do that, you know, rather than saying, oh, I shouldn't be so egotistical. I need to be more humble. Whap whap, you know, it's that post-Puritan.
Oh, I thought you were supposed to kill the ego.
Yeah, exactly. As my dad. Oh, yeah. There's some Eastern paths that jump on that, but I think they're using it in a different way. Ego means self in Greek. But anyway, yeah. What was I saying? Shoot. Well, my dad had a great quote. Oh, how, you know, something about when we come from slavery into freedom, we tend to kind of reconstruct the chains that we're used to out of nothing but just bad habits, you know, and unacknowledged, unrecognized old habits. And so when people say, I don't have to be, you know, an evangelist or whatever like my parents, I can be a Thelemite and I will do what I wilt. But then you find out, you know, you end up like running into a lot of the same stuff that you're imprinted with because you didn't actually address the stuff line by line that you were imprinted with. And that's where the work comes in, the alchemy comes in. I mean, that's one cartooned example, you know. And everybody has their own unique set of things they need to work through, which is why the grades are different for everybody. One thing that I whenever, and I consider it culty, just straight up, and I get annoyed whenever I hear people doing it, is when people say, oh, you're in the grade of Zelator, oh, yeah, you know, my tires all popped when that happened, or whatever the fuck they're going to say, you know, like, oh, you're in the grade, oh, well, I lost my mind, and you know, in that grade, or oh, I was an emotional basket case in practicus, you know, what'll probably happen to you is this and that, you know, and I say, you know, like, no, they're different for everybody, and I mean that, like, on the far extreme of the spectrum. They're different for everybody. You know, what was it like for you? Well, that's a different question. You know, like, okay, well, I can tell you about my experience of the grades. But I disagree with people who say the grade will be like this for you. Because, no, just teach the work and shut up. Let them have their alchemy. If they come to you and say, I'm having this alchemy, then see what it is. But don't put alchemy. You know, I mean, give them teachings. It's great teachings. It's like you just put them through a really, really great, beautiful initiation written 130 years ago by really, really sharp people. And then you're going to shit all over it and ruin it on the way out when you say, oh, well, good luck with that neophyte energy. You know, you're probably going to get divorced. You know, like, why the fuck would you do that? You know, and so, yeah, I don't like it when people do that. And that's one of the things that came from the order that I came from. And so a lot of the prodigen, the children, the offspring of that order, will lapse into that old habit. And like I said, you know, they came from slavery into freedom, and they didn't necessarily shuffle off all the things they were imprinted with.
You didn't mention the Enochian tablets.
No, not really. Well,
Can't talk about that.
Well, I mean, it's not that as much as, like, I don't speak Enochian. I don't know the letters, but I use them. I know, I have certain things memorized, so, I mean, I could pretend that, you know, that, like, I know that this says, Oe pe te pedoke, and this says, idel per na and I know that this says exarpe, and then this says nanta, you know, but I only know that because I've practiced it for so long. I've never sat down and learned the Enochian alphabet, and I've had friends who flipped out, who lost their fucking mind. Well, I had one good friend who lost his mind, and he got way heavily into some weird Enochian. But it might have been correlation and not causation. I don't know. But I know a lot of people are really obsessed with it. I've also watched enough documentaries about John Dee and Edward Kelly to know they didn't really get anywhere with it. You know, and as far as I can tell, you know, no one since really has either. But at the same time, I've had a lot of experience with it, and I've had teachers and fellow and peers who took it really seriously, and so I've taken it seriously enough to have some of my favorite beings. I like Ani Doinu, the senior of Mercury Fire. He's my favorite. But I don't know. I mean, what do you want to know? You know, like I might have a book that explains that I can look up. But I mean, like for example,
Dee and Kelly got so far as to swap mates.
Yeah, they didn't get very far at all, and in the end, they both felt like they had wasted a lot of time, and they had. They would have done a lot better, you know, getting in a boat and going to India. I mean, he thought he had learned everything that there was to learn from humans, so he like locked himself in his attic and started rolling his eyes back while some criminal was looking into a showstone. And yeah, they gave us something really interesting. And then someone came along and took it seriously later, and now I fucking know it for some reason. And I don't know, it just came with the package. But I do the Watchtower, and I'm pretty well schooled in Enochian, but it's just, I honestly, like, I put the Watchtowers back up today. I had them down, but like, because of the Golden Dawn interest, you know, I decided to like set up the temple this way. Earlier today, I had no watchtowers. This was all in the east as like a shrine, so that I could just do yoga here and then do my chants. Because like I don't really like I'm more into that right now personally than I am into a lot of this and this. But when people come over who are schooled in the Golden Dawn, it's a very beautiful social experience to practice magic together. And I love teaching people who love learning it, you know, because their eyes light up, and there's this great exchange of chemicals and everything. But honestly, like when I'm alone, I'm more into meditation and you know. But I'm inspired to do these podcasts, you know, and but I like, I mean I'm getting exposed to new and interesting things, but I'm representing this sort of Victorian, well, I'm this big Golden Dawn nerd, because I was for so many years that I just come off as that. I'm not coming off as a yogi who is sort of cynical about Golden Dawn. I have that other podcast called Gwydian's Astral Coffee House, where, okay, there's the Master Therion, Crowley, when he left the Golden Dawn, and he's like, okay, first I need to conquer my ego. So every time I say the word I will cut myself. Oh shit, I just said it 3 times, 4 times. Okay. Okay, from now on I shall okay, from now on, the Master Therion. Oh, and I don't have to cut myself. Okay, so the Master Therion has conquered his ego because the Master Therion never uses the word The Master Therion will now go to the bathroom, you know, and so he was the Master Therion. And so my equivalent in my alchemy of the ex-Golden Dawn adept rebelling is the Master Gwydion. But that was actually a seed that was planted back in 2001, but with the intention of taking over the order and having die. It was actually with the intention of waiting the fucker out and then eventually taking on the role of chief adept of this gargantuan worldwide order in order to steer in a better direction. And I was willing to be patient, you know. And that was 2001, and that was when I was given the name Gwydion. And that's what Gwydion was and always has been. And so he's a poet, very passionate, and thinks the Golden Dawn is really stupid. And I recommend his podcast. I use the third person when I talk about Gwydion because I disassociate myself from him, because sometimes he speaks in anger and he speaks things that I don't think are true. So I have several names. I have which you might have seen written on everything. And it's a vision I had when I was practicing Zazen the first time in the Great Portal in 1999 under this beatnik named Gordon that I was living with at the time, who technically was a student of mine. And then when he died last year, he just was an inspiration to a ton of people, a whole generation of Pasadena beatniks and people who weren't going to put up with any of these shit. When these preppy girls from Manhattan Beach, you know, came in, and they're like, could you do like a foamy latte thing with some cinnamon? And the guy was like, no. And she was like, excuse me? You need to like have some manners, you know. And he's like, do you want anything that's on the menu? And she's like, I want to talk to your manager. And he's like, you don't want to talk to my manager. And she's like, I want to talk to, yes, bring your manager out here. And he's like, don't say I didn't warn you. And he went into the back and he said, hey, Gordon. Gordon's like, what? He's like, Gordon, one of the customers wants to see the manager. And so he comes up and he's like, what is it? And she was like, your employee was just saying, I just wanted, and he takes the hot fucking coffee and he pours it on her. It burns her. And she calls the police. And then he goes to court. He's like, that's Gordon. I don't know the details of the case, but he got away with it. I think he might have had to pay a fine or something. But yeah, no, he brought the Hells Angels in as witnesses at one point. He was a nut. Anyway, so that was Gordon. And then he was in the order. He didn't get past practicus because once you're in philosophy, you're supposed to be a teacher and an example to others. And he's like, fuck that. We already went through Scientology. We didn't want to get involved in staff of another organization. In order to keep other people off his back, I was his teacher. So I made sure that always, me. Yeah, I like to, Enochian for me is more of a practice than a talk about. I mean, when I have a group of people together, I can do a mean. People get so obsessed with it that I don't understand. I don't think it's healthy, because it's all this weird revelation stuff. So they're usually like fundies that want to bring about the end of the world or something. So like deep down. But Enochian magic for beginners. You learn about the horsemen of the apocalypse. Anyway, these are signed by Tabitha Cicero. These are the archangels. I was going to show you. But I didn't introduce you to my family. This is my dad, John Dan Reed. This is his belt. This is his dad, Dan Reed. He's the one who brought oil to China. And this is the guy whose room we're in, Walter. When he was a baby, then this was when he was in the Navy, and I told you about that when he walled in the porch down there when he got back from the Navy. So this is Walter. He's my mother's father. So father, and then mother's father. So mother's side of the family. And then that train is also mother's side of the family. My sister and I had different fathers. So my sister is mother's side of the family also. This is my mother.
Dharma Sound CD.
Yeah, I put that out, and Father Yod. I made this, I painted it to represent my mom.
Is it a fake Rolex?
This is my dad's watch. I don't know if it's Is it a Rolex? I don't think it's a Rolex. I don't know what it is. But yeah, this is his watch. And then this is his journal that I read out of sometimes in the Edward Reed podcast. But it's hard to read, so it's just me going, I think he's saying such and such. And then this belongs to him, this statue. When he and his second wife, my step-great-grandmother Bernie, went to Egypt, he just fell absolutely in love with Nefertiti. And he just couldn't get enough of Nefertiti, and he bought this statue. And so, to the point where, his wife was sick of hearing about Nefertiti.
I think they found her burial.
Oh, yeah?
Have you heard that?
Oh, no.
Oh, it's a theory.
Oh, okay.
It's the theory is that Tutankhamun's burial is actually hers.
Oh.
She's hidden in the walls. There's another larger room back there. Because the speculation always was that it seemed, unlike other burials, it seemed cluttered. It didn't seem organized. It didn't seem like it was designed well. So they're apparently they've done, I guess, sonograms on the wall.
Here, So what was the name of the book that you edited and produced?
It's called Real Alchemy.
Oh. Who was the author?
Robert Bartlett.
Okay.
Robert Bartlett is a real alchemist. He has a degree in chemistry, and has worked as a real chemist. But he also apprenticed with and studied with Frater Albertus in Salt Lake City. And Frater
was connected to Sean in Denver.
Frater Albertus was a real alchemist of the 20th century, and he had taught at the AMORC in San Jose, I think it is.
Right.
Okay,
These are great books. This Gareth Knight book here,
Mm-hmm.
this is the one that I first read about Kabbalah, and it's the first time the thing started to make sense for me. It's the main book that I tell my students to read, along with The Own Fortunes.
Nice.
This one looks cool. Found Fundamentals of Tibetan Mysticism.
Yeah, that is in episode 2 of the Esoterinerd, the one with Kes Fry. He's the one who gave me that book. So he talks about that book and why he's giving it to me, and I don't remember. It's for the
nice
sanctuary.
collection of it.
People can read a book while they're waiting for whatever. I don't know.
In the Temple Library.
Yeah. But I do like the Meccan Revelations. The Lotus Born is good. The ones over here I've read because they're stacked up. This one is good. You remember the girl Yishi Tsiogal, the one with the statue on the side?
Right.
There?
Yeah.
She wrote this, and about Padmasambhava, her
Oh, really?
significant other.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's a great book. I love that book.
So I was particularly interested that, the Golden Dawn people that I know in Seattle
Mm-hmm.
were quite interested in learning the actual real alchemy.
Oh yeah.
Because they, were familiar with the concepts of the transformation, the spiritual transformation of
But also
alchemy.
as above, so below. So
Right.
you can't be a real spiritual alchemist until you learn the physical alchemy.
Yeah. So
By that nerdism, the nerd logic of the Golden Dawn.
So
practitioner.
somehow, synchronistically, I met my master, Robert Bartlett, the real alchemist. He was living outside Seattle at the time, and he was doing these he was just starting to do workshops.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to the first workshop, and there were like three of us there, something like that. And then he did it was a full day, and I was just blown away because this was like real practical laboratory alchemy.
Yeah.
And I had always had the impression that alchemy was more of a psychological metaphor for
Was it
transformation.
Tincture of lemongrass?
Oh, all
Started.
kinds of things. Herbal. He starts with herbal alchemy,
Mm.
but first the history, and then how to do simple herbal works. And he starts with it's escaping me at the moment.
Citrus or some kind of?
No, it's starts with an R. So I kind of met him on the ground floor, and he had been practicing real alchemy. He had been working as a chemist in Idaho in an antimony mine. He worked as a miner in an antimony mine.
Wow.
And antimony is a major part of the mineral works, I found out.
Probably not good for the lungs. I would
No.
imagine.
And that he had a place in Idaho, I think, and he had a lab in his house, and the neighbors saw the glasswork through the window or something and called the cops. And the
they
cops
thought it
came
was,
and raided it and confiscated all of his laboratory gear. And then he had to go to court, and he had to convince the judge that he was an alchemist and that he wasn't a meth dealer.
Those meth addicts are giving alchemists a bad name.
Yeah, so he had that all confiscated, and he got it all back, actually. He convinced them that he was not doing meth. And so I took multiple classes with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to acquire my own gear, and I guess I asked to be his apprentice.
Nice.
And so he accepted that, and I got more and more gear, and progressed further and further.
Mm-hmm.
And finally at one point, he had demonstrated how to do the oil of egg. It's where you extract the oil out of egg yolk.
Oh.
And it has miraculous healing properties, apparently. It was at that point that I said, you really should write a book about all of this. And the next thing you know, he says, well, okay, I've written the book. And so I offered to produce it and edit it. And so we actually formed a partnership called Quinquangle Press, which I thought was a great name.
Yeah.
And I edited the text, and then 6 months later we produced the first edition. And Dennis Hawk, who is another well-respected, well-known alchemist, he wrote a book called The Emerald Tablet. He did a foreword to the book, and the first edition was very well received. I, however, didn't have the resources to really support the book as a publishing house, in the proper way. So I took the first edition out of print. But then Robert then put out multiple editions after that, and I think it's now available on Red Wing Press, which is a part of Samuel Weiser Books. So it's got major distribution now, and I think the last time I looked on Amazon, it has 5 stars.
Nice.
So it's considered to be one of the definitive works in the topic.
Yeah, I finally decided to publish my dad's book. So I'm going to have to start going into that world in the next year just to make it official. I had it available for free for many years. And I always would tell people, just search for John Dan Reed Transformations and you got it. Now if they do that, the PDF says this is no longer available for free. Just, join his Facebook page and I'll keep you posted about it, the publication. And then there's another place where it was also available for free, same thing. And so now it's kind of annoying to me because now when I want to look something up in my dad's book, I can't just go on the internet and do it. I have to dig through my files, But I mean, yeah, I've decided to finally do that. I think that by making it freely available, there are enough communities now that in which there are at least a few people that have read it, and so that will help in familiarity with it, I think, and then Poke Runyon coming out and publicly admitting that they were best buddies for many years, and my dad was kind of bouncing ideas off of him while he was forming the OTA and stuff like that. I think it'll bring at least a little bit of some really fringe interest in my dad, and I think anybody who's interested in Est historically or into landmark forum in present day would be interested in a book that was inspired by that working, and already is. That's on the landmark forum. They've got a link to it. And so yeah, so I don't know. I just decided it's time, and So I mean, but
if you want an editor, I'll do that.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the book is as it is. It's like the Bible. It's you don't change it, But it's chapters and verses. I have it memorized, parts of it. But as far as any footnotes or formatting or introduction or afterward, forward, all that good stuff, then yeah, that'd be. I don't know if he's popular enough to justify a physical print of it, but the book might be, the words might be. But the thing is, it's dated. The references he's making are all 1976 references, which to me is fascinating. But then I'm biased. He's my dad. So, but then it's at a certain point, what used to be normal, regular life passing is now history. When people are getting really interested in the 80s who were born in the 90s or later, it's amazing to watch it unfold. And I remember people who were older than me when I was young trying to explain how weird it was to watch, and I was like, wow, that must be weird. And now I'm like, yeah, you're right, it is weird. It's really weird. But it's nice that, because I wasn't alive in 1976. It was 2 years before I was born, and I can reach back and kind of look through my dad's eyes and see what the world looked like just before I was born, and it gives me the sense that I wasn't born in 1978,
That's
the more
year
history
I was
we
married.
Know. Nice.
In the 200th anniversary of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I was too young. I was 20. What an idiot.
Yeah, I was an idiot.
I wouldn't listen to anybody. People were telling me, don't. This is silly. Don't do that. So many people think that alchemy is is just a spiritual transformation. It's psychological, the Jungians. And then when you say, well, actually, it's based on real laboratory work,
Right.
It kind of blows people's minds. Oh, you're kidding me.
I think that chemists, especially these days, when they get into the really, like a chemist in a lab, when they get so absorbed in the project, like the ones that are talking about when they're dealing with the quantum universe and they start to realize that the one that they were expecting to happen starts happening, they're doing alchemy. Whatever label they want to put on it, their intention is involved in the results of the mixing of the different things. They're doing alchemy. I mean, when an alchemist comes along and wants to teach alchemy, they're teaching an older form of alchemy. The ones that are not calling it alchemy are doing the real present day alchemy.
That's interesting. I hadn't really thought of that from that angle before. That's true.
It's just not popular to have Allah at the beginning of things.
Hello from the future. That is, the future from the perspective of the time in which the episode that you've been listening to exists or existed. This is Freder BT speaking to you from Goa. If that sounds unusual, then you probably aren't caught up on the Esoterinerd podcast, and that's okay. On YouTube, we're up to, as you can see, episode 24. And this episode, being 3 hours and 46 minutes long, was I couldn't get a file small enough. It wasn't a YouTube thing. It's just I'm using this app on my phone to make these episodes and upload them. And so the file was too big for my phone to deal with, so I had to break it into 2 parts. So this episode, and probably some future episodes, because there are some long episodes on the Esoterinerd podcast, are going to have to be broken up into 2, just for the YouTube, recording for posterity or whatever. I decided to put these up on YouTube. People had requested it for a while because it's just so darn easy for people to listen to a podcast through the YouTube app. Anyhow, hope everybody's doing well, and I'll stop rambling now, and you'll hear me rambling again in the part 2 of this originally 1 episode, now 2-parter episode. Episode 24, part 2.